many Copperheads are there in the DC multiverse, and which came first? Okay, this one was started because a lot of people are confused on this subject. It doesn't help that the various YouTubers who make videos of all the Copperheads don't explain anything or tend to get the characters mixed up themselves, which leads to article writers mixing them up, confusing everyone further. I did in-depth research on these characters and I know they're getting it wrong, which drives me nuts. So, we're here to clarify and show you who each Copperhead is and where they fall in the DC timeline. First, a timeline. We're going to kind of work off the comic book timeline as best we can, despite the major inconsistencies, but mostly sticking to Batman's as that's where most of the Copperheads were introduced. Second, what makes a Copperhead? A Copperhead is a villainous contortionist who doubles as a thief and assassin. Mostly assassin. As they're all different people, they will have various skills on the side. The name Copperhead is more of a title than a name as it's used by a lot of people with the same abilities. Plus, it's a cool name. Who wouldn't use it? Lastly, we're not going to put everything about them in this, otherwise John Doe is going to take 3 hours to talk about. Timeline-wise, Larissa Diaz shows up first as she appears when Bruce is 10 years old in the 2014 Gotham TV show. We watched the one episode of Gotham she was in, and she wasn't called by either Copperhead or by her real name, just First Assassin in the credits. She wasn't called Copperhead or Larissa Diaz until an interview months or years later. She was technically based off John Doe Copperhead, but they made her a normal human female, changed up the kill tactics, and lowered her IQ. The whole "she was based off Jane Doe from the Arkham Knights game" is a myth because the game Jane Doe was introduced in came a whole year after the episode was aired, meaning Jane Doe Copperhead was still a concept art when Larissa tried to kill a teenage Catwoman. It's hard to see her as a Copperhead, as her musical motif has a rattlesnake rattles, was given a posse, and kept giving her targets an easy escape. She even relies heavily on guns, which a Copperhead never uses.
No, I suppose this lady's been involved in a car accident. Run! Run!
Where's your girlfriend?
To be a true Copperhead, you have to be silent, usually work alone, be venomous, and leave no witnesses. They're close combat specialists who rarely leave victims alive, only alerting their prey during the killing bite. This is what makes a Copperhead so effective and feared. We honestly couldn't take the show seriously with the dark lighting, melodramatic, convoluted dialogue, and the overuse of leather. And the show is casual disregard for canon. The show itself was self-unaware, making it kind of hilarious. As it rewrote everyone's backstories and pulled random ages out of a hat, it diverges from the original timeline by a lot. In a way, making her first and non-existent at the same time. So she goes in her own little timeline right here. John Doe Copperhead is the original Copperhead, as he shows up back in Batman the Brave and the Bold comics issue 78 on May 19th, 1968. By his abilities and dialogue, you can tell he's been at this for at least a few years. He's the Copperhead that shows up most in media because he's been around the longest, but he isn't well known because he doesn't stick to just one hero, making him hard to find. So he ends up mostly as a background character in shows and movies, often being downplayed to not scare people, thrown around, or used as a joke. This Copperhead is the one who inspired the other Copperheads and is the most mistaken for the others because no one does their homework. Comic writers love him because he isn't limited by hero or backstory, making him a catalyst to build up other characters or a walking plot device for any story they need without sacrificing his personality. Plus, his character allows him to work well for a wide range of genres. Comic artists love him because he's flexible, creepy, and overall fun to draw. I'm also 90% sure that they only created him in the first place because one of the writers just learned a bunch of snake facts. Due to his werewolf-like snake mutation, his appearance varies wildly, it getting worse with age, it taking a massive downhill turn after he sells his soul, leaving him more snake than man. None of the other Copperheads have this limited shape-shifting ability. It's kind of nice that he was one of the few characters in the New 52 didn't ruin, even if they tried, due to his rapid healing factor and ability to walk off damage like it's nothing. He's likely to actually be in his hundreds by the time he dies in the first Kate Spencer Manhunter comic in 2004. As a snake, he would just continue to get bigger and bigger until someone puts him out of his misery, which someone did per his plan. Him literally being the longest living Copperhead. Both of these will be explained in 2 other videos. So little is known about him, powers, past, intellect, and contacts, that the Justice League didn't register him as a threat. This made it possible for him to kill and steal with little interruption, leaving hundreds of unsolved cases. What he was good at was disguises, killing, stealing, scaring, escaping, and adapting, making him a creature others would respect despite his unpredictable nature. Cadmus knew this, so they kept bringing him into the Task Force X program, yet they still couldn't control him. He's the wild card on any villain team. And another thing, people found him so useful that they even stole body parts, like this comic. Like his Night storyline. Right here. Dick Grayson uncovered a body snatching operation that was harvesting superhuman parts of reuse. You can't even see that. And like you see, like, Copperhead right there, John Doe. So he likely starts about here and ends here. Okay. There is like 2 other Copperheads. They came before DC Comics was DC Comics. In the Sensation comics, there is a group of boys called the Little Boy Blues, and like you see a character that and like Copperhead shows up, and you can and like it looks kind of like a first draft of what John Doe may have looked like, and in a completely different comic, more or less all kind of started, there was a character called Copperhead. He more or less was just kind of a henchman with a green hat and an orange suit. So yeah, those 2 technically comes first. The next in line is a young lady from the Arkham Knights game from 2015. Her name is Jane Doe. In the timeline, she becomes a Copperhead before John Doe Copperhead dies. According to the games themselves, he is very much alive and active. The game developers wrote a whole thing about why they made her in the first place. We knew from the start that there was something very cool about the idea of Copperhead, but we also wanted a female character. There was something very interesting about the first appearance of Copperhead in The Brave and the Bold. The pieces fell into place when we realized it would be a much more powerful image to see Batman constricted by a scary contortionist girl rather than a creepy guy. I hope our players agree. Eric Holmes. Well, Eric, a creepy guy who is a living horror movie monster trying to rip out Batman's throat, is honestly scarier than a half-naked girl in leather failing to strangle him with her thighs. You seem to have missed the mark a wee bit. Her given backstory. She mainly did escapes and 1 theft, with only 2 murders under her belt from drug gang activity. She doesn't even qualify as an assassin because of this. The reason she's called Copperhead is because it's an alias adopted by all male assassins in her South American clan, but she wrote down that she was a male in order to get the name. She has quite a few permanent reptilian features and a rapid healing factor similar to John Doe's, albeit with easier to break bones. She has a knack for poisons, despite not knowing the difference, and judo, her helping Scarecrow make a new fear toxin, explaining to how her venom works. After the failed attempt to kill Batman, she went on to be a crime boss, or work for one. It's not that clear. She is considered the 4th Copperhead because of when she was created, and also appears in later comics with characters that only exist in recent shows. So she also gets a different timeline branch. No continuity with these girls. Next is the worst and shortest-lived Copperhead, Nathan Prince, who showed up around 2008 in the Terror Titans comics. He's what we would consider a rated R villain, so we're not going to go into specifics in order to either not traumatize our viewers or have to read the comics ourselves, because no. If you want to look into him on your own time, that's your fault. He stole the Copperhead costume because of the reputation it comes with. He mostly believed that it would instantly garner respect, only to get none from those that actually knew John Doe. The older criminals understood that merely wearing fake fangs, colored contacts, and the suit didn't make you a Copperhead. He is in no way related to John Doe, nor was someone John Doe would have considered training. Considering some of his more questionable methods, John Doe would have killed him with no remorse. John Doe may be a criminal, but even he has standards. As he had succeeded at stealing the suit, John Doe had been dead for a while. John Doe never wore this version of the suit. It was designed to be worn by a normal-toned person and is more decorative than protective. Either he made it just prior to the deal with Neron and never got a chance to wear it, or he made it for Shadow Thief, who we suspect he was training at the time. So we can more or less safely say that he becomes Copperhead here and dies here. Last we have the Pakistani daddy Samir Park. He was introduced in the 2018 Suicide Squad Hell to Pay movie. According to Wikipedia, Samir was introduced in the Forever Evil comics, which is an alternate dimension where the main heroes are evil. It looks like John Doe, and no one ever says his real name. I have no idea where they got the information that this was Samir Park. Unlike the other Copperheads, he had augmented himself with cybernetics and has a child. He was created because they wanted to kill off Copperhead in the end, but John Doe didn't have a sympathetic backstory for anyone to latch onto, and he was impossible to kill by Cadmus standards. They made sure to make him as unique as possible without forgetting John Doe's roots because of the respect for his character. If anything, Samir was meant to be the sacrificial snake. He had the mantle for a few years. It's possible that he saw John Doe in his prime when he was a child and wanted to be just like him, but that's just a theory. The movie takes the course over a few weeks and he dies at the end of the mission, starting him about here and ending here. Copperhead is a highly respected name, title, and mantle with a complicated history, but the one thing you can get out of this is no matter what the iteration of Copperheads, don't underestimate them and be afraid. Be very afraid. Hope this was helpful. Bye! Comment, like, and subscribe. Don't be rude to me. Bye!